Don't worry, we can give you powers. Yes, scary powers.
The Three Weirdos are the ghosts of deceased Mudokons that are awoken from their peaceful slumber, disturbed by having their bones dug up by the industrial forces of the Glukkons that have begun their excavation of the ancient Mudokon burial grounds of Necrom. These spirits, also known as Those Dudes Now Dead, are the catalyst of Abe's journey in the second game, Oddworld Abe's Exoddus, continuing on directly from the ending of Abe's Oddysee. Which for some reason I feel like it's kind of rare that a sequel literally follows on from the same scene as its predecessor. So that's quite nice. When I was younger, I think my brain never really fully separated Abe's Oddysee and Abe's Exoddus, so maybe that's a major reason why. Losing his balance and falling from a great height, Abe is knocked unconscious, which seemingly affords these spiritual beings the opportunity to enter his open mind and plead for his help. The Glukkons' founding of SoulStorm Brewery ends up creating a whole industry around producing the addictive SoulStorm brew that they're given to the Mudokons so they have something to provide them in exchange for work, trapping them into a lifetime of slavehood. As a result, the SoulStorm Mining Company was established to provide the brewery with a constant supply of one of the key ingredients for their drink, bones. And what better place to get a massive reserve of them than from an ancient burial ground. But the digging up of the bones of Mudokons long dead awakens their spirits, apparently causing them pain and restlessness. This is reflected further by the dismembered appearance of the Three Weirdos. One missing an arm, another missing his leg, and the third one is missing his entire lower body. One thing that I noticed that I thought was quite funny is that while the guy missing half his body obviously floats, the other two use their legs or leg to ground themselves on the floor, but they don't use them to walk. When they move, they also just levitate off the floor and float about. Just something I never noticed before. Really though, the Three Weirdos and what they're going through is kind of a genuinely disturbing concept in and of itself. Just the idea that the Mudokon spirits are still connected and affected by what's going on with their final resting place. The notion that they're experiencing an afterlife where they feel what's happening to their physical remains, to the point it's even reflected in the appearance of their ghostly apparitions, is something that is a very concerning thought. Although a part of me wonders if this is merely like a translation of their ethereal nature and what's happening to them into reality so they're able to communicate with Abe, if that makes sense, or something like that. Then again, they also appear like that when they're not communicating with Abe, so maybe not. Showing their ghostly nature, the Weirdos glow a relatively slow ever-changing shade going from a bluey purple to a reddy purple, and likewise also have pupilless, bright, emissive red-orange eyes. Aside from their missing body parts though, they physically appear as basically normal but ethereal dead grey Mudokons, which is shown clearer in this rendered art of them, which omits the purple luminescence seen in the game. In fact, if I add a sort of purple layer to the image myself, suddenly they appear far more like they do in the cutscenes, with the reddy orange eyes, which are otherwise revealed to instead be yellow and orange, and their whole ensemble appears different colours, as opposed to in the cutscenes when they're engulfed and appear entirely to be the colour of the purple glow, aside from their eyes. Without the glow, we're able to see in far greater clarity the specific details of the Three Weirdos' now bluer appearance. And it's an interesting insight into what the ancient Mudokons may have looked like, as they're covered in ceremonial paint and each have a unique headdress to go along with it, representing a different creature. Apparently there's one for paramites and scrabs, as you might expect as is tradition, but the third one is for the fleeches. Which ones are which though isn't 100% clear in my opinion. I think this one is for the scrabs, because it kind of looks like scrab heads, and also this guy looks grumpy, which suits the scrab's aggressive personality I guess. But then the other two are quite similar, but I'd say it mainly due to the paint. This guy must be the paramite one, and so the one that's left seemingly represents a fleech. And looking at this bit on the back of the headdress, I can kind of see it. According to the Art of Oddworld Inhabitants book, the headdresses are made from natural toll fibre and river-polished gems. Very fancy ghosts. After arriving in Necrom and witnessing the Glukkon mining operations, as well as the effects of SoulStorm Brew on the Mudokons causing them to be sick, Abe makes his way through the Necrom jungle and faces the trials of the Scrab-based Mudanchi vaults and the Paramite-based Mudomo vaults, both of which heavily feature Fleeches. After completing these tests, he enters the Necrom Elder Burial Ground, the final resting place of the most revered Mudokon elders, and comes face to face with what is to us its most notable occupants, the Three Weirdos, who tell him to shut down SoulStorm Brewery like he'd just done to Rupture Farms as the saviour of the Mudokon race. To aid him in this mission, they inform him that they're able to gift him scary powers and provide him with his chest scar, which gives him the ability to heal sick Mudokons that can then assist him in closing the factory. Which is kind of weird that they consider healing Mudokons as being a scary power, considering in the last game Abe got the ability to transform into a half scrab, half paramite monstrosity that destroys everything in its path. Healing seems like quite a pleasant power, but there we go. Now, slight spoilers I guess for Oddworld SoulStorm here, but I just want to say I much prefer the way Abe gets the ability to heal sick Mudokons in Exoddus than in SoulStorm. This way it makes much more sense to me than the idea in SoulStorm that somehow a guy that spent his entire life being a slave in a factory suddenly MacGyvers together a bunch of herbs and spices and shit, literally, like he actually uses shit, to make a cure, and that none of the other Mudokons or anyone else has thought to do this before. I don't know, maybe there's a reason for it, but it just feels random and out of character to me. Whereas at least there's precedence with Exoddus, where Abe has already been through similar experiences and it's out of his control that he gets this ability. He's just sort of going along for the ride, as always, as opposed to randomly coming across sick Mudokons and then seeking to create a cure, and within like 20 minutes of deciding he needs to do this, he's invented a cure from the local surroundings, like some kind of miracle scientist. I guess maybe they were trying to make use of his new crafting mechanic by including that further into the story and making that a part of his character perhaps. Maybe it would have worked better if it was something you had to strategize about and always keep in mind and like craft more of it to get more Mudokons to help you out or something. That's not how it is, he just invents the cure and then he's got an unlimited supply of it, and basically every sick Mudokon you come across after that, for no particular reason, you have to hold down X or whatever before he'll be responsive to you, which I don't know, maybe there's a gameplay reason for it that I'm not considering, but it just seemed to add more time to these interactions than is necessary for no particular reason as far as I could tell. Not to mention the cure is a big part of the story, but sort of feels like something that just happens randomly in one of the early levels and doesn't seem like a big deal, whereas in Exoddus it has its own cutscene and feels like a pivotal moment that he's been working towards, but that might just be me. This whole cutscene in Exoddus really shows a sort of mystical, powerful, kind of creepy nature to the Weirdos. Not just the fact that they're able to levitate Abe, conjure up lightning and strike his chest to give him the scar and healing ability, but also just the way when he enters the tomb, the door shuts and the flames either side ignite by themselves. The dark environment and just creepy nature of the Weirdos really lends themselves well to the uneasiness Abe is clearly feeling. A part of me wonders if they're intentionally trying to creep Abe out. I don't know why that'd be the case, maybe just for fun, but they definitely seem in particular in this scene to be portrayed as being very unsettling. In fact, I actually think their voices are different in this scene to how they are in the opening cutscene. Here they sound way more croaky and basically how you might expect dead dudes to sound.
The Glukkons are digging up our bones. Yes, they're in powers.
Maybe they purposefully tried to sound nicer and less dead in the vision so Abe wouldn't be frightened off. But no, for real, I'm wondering why this is, cause I never noticed this before, that literally their voices are different between the cutscenes, unless I'm mistaken. Considering the introduction of the Three Weirdos proves that ghosts exist in this universe, makes you wonder how exactly they're viewed in Oddworld society. In my Shrink video, I theorised that the industrialists might be aware of the Mudokon depiction of ghosts, whether they believe in it or not, and use this to scare them. For example, the Shrink, due to its relatively similar appearance to the Weirdos, I think may have specifically been portraying not just a Mudokon, but a Mudokon ghost, as like a psychological tactic in its interrogation mode, which wouldn't actually be that far off reality in some ways. It's not beyond more industrialized civilizations in the real world to use the superstitions of native cultures against them in an arguably similar manner. I read recently that in the 1950s the CIA used the myth of a sort of vampire creature in the Philippines called an aswang against the very superstitious local population to combat guerrilla forces. They'd silently capture members of their patrols, kill them, puncture their necks and drain the blood from their bodies before putting them back on the trail, so when the others backtracked and found the bodies, they thought it might be this vampire-like creature and consequently fled the area. Back to Oddworld though, if the industrialists seem potentially to be somewhat aware of the idea of a depiction of ghosts, how does native culture and the Mudokons themselves view them? To some degree I get the impression that the idea of all this spiritual type of thing is somewhat lost, at least to the former slave Mudokons. Abe seems very creeped out and nervous when meeting the Weirdos, as you would be, and it's clear that this isn't normal to him. But then again, he still takes the ghosts appearing in his vision seriously and seemingly immediately does what they say. And not only that, but a bunch of Mudokons go along with him, which might just be because Abe has enough persuasion by that point to convince them to go with him, but it might also suggest that just in general, these Mudokons are willing to believe that a bunch of spirits visited Abe to tell him to look for a place that again seems to be lost to them. I was thinking that likely the native Mudokons have held on to the belief in spirits, and indeed in Dear Alf seemed to indicate that Big Face acts almost as like a guardian, I guess, of the Weirdos. Which would also kind of make sense timing wise, when you consider they come to speak to Abe immediately after he completes Big Face's trials. The Glukkons, by the looks of it, have been mining for a while. It seems to be a really embedded, extensive operation. So why did the Weirdos not communicate with anyone else instead, before this? Seems to me like they were waiting for the saviour of their kind to reveal themselves by going through the tests set up by Big Face, someone who has proven themselves to be able to carry out the tasks that they need them to do. In this case, shut down SoulStorm Brewery. Specifically though, Alf was responding to someone asking him if he could get tattoos and therefore powers like Abe, responding by saying, "I talked to Big Face about using some tattoos, but he said I would have to earn them. What does that mean, earn them? I need tribal know-how? I need to walk aimlessly in the desert with a big silly mask on my face? I have to be in a band? Pfft, I don't need his tattoos. I'm currently drawing my own using mud and a stick. I've been banging on the door of the Weirdos to give me some cool powers for ages. They won't see me without the approval of Big Face, so again with the mud and the stick." Suggests to me, whether you want to take him seriously or not, that native Mudokons are aware of ghosts and even potentially communicate with them, so perhaps this and Abe's influence is why the recently freed Mudokons go along with this. But it seems that even to the natives, Necrom is a location that they don't know where it is potentially, considering they have to go searching for it. As Abe says, long ago the Mudokons brought their dead here. So it seems to be like an ancient lost place in the middle of nowhere that maybe they've heard of in legends and somewhat know where it's meant to be vaguely. However, despite having this loose faith in the spirits and Necrom itself, it doesn't seem to be particularly strong, as evidenced by the fact all of Abe's followers give up and want to go home after a while of not finding anything on their journey, when things start getting tiring. But their faith is reignited and they become very excited when they finally find signs of the place they're looking for. Either way, ghosts do exist in Oddworld, and as a result, using their powers, Abe is able to dismantle multiple Glukkon operations and tear down SoulStorm Brewery, saving the souls of his ancestors from desecration. Although they don't seem particularly impressed by it, shrugging to the player at the end of the ending cutscene, and apparently they now spend their time in their tombs complaining about Abe not doing as good as he could have. However, if you save all 300 Mudokons in the game, you get a special end screen, seemingly showing the Weirdos giving you a message about the future. Don't even worry about your long lost Mudokon mother yet. You'll know all about it when you meet Munch. Of course, unfortunately, this didn't end up happening exactly when Abe does meet Munch in Munch's Oddysee, and in a Dear Alf, Alf was asked, "Why haven't we heard anything about Abe's mother, even though the Weirdos promised we would know about her when we met Munch?" To which Alf replied, "I'm sure the Weirdos believed that was true, but she's nowhere to be found and it's pretty frustrating for everyone involved. Makes the Weirdos look like a bunch of nutcases, or at least more so than usual." The Three Weirdos are, for me, one of the most interesting entities in the Oddworld franchise. I think I'd actually say they're my favourite out of the mentor-type characters, like Big Face and the Almighty Raisin. And seemingly I'm not the only one, as Alf was asked which of them he liked more, and his response was to say, "The Weirdos hold a special place in this old mud's heart. They have spared life and limb, yet they still find time to drop in and help their buddy Abe. And I love their shiny glowing colours, reminds me of the time I got lost in that field and had to eat strange bulbs to survive." He was also asked if Big Face, the Weirdos, the Almighty Raisin and the Shaman ever met each other, to which he said, "Oh yes, they get together for the annual Big Faced Weirdos, Raisins and Shamans convention every year. Don't bother trying to get in though, it's industry professionals only." I think what makes the Weirdos unique is the way, firstly, I think they're creepy and kind of genuinely scary. I have a vague memory of being scared or something of the bit in the opening cutscene where Abe gets the vision of them.
That's when they came to see me.
Abe, you're the savior of the Mudokons, so you gotta help us.
The Glukkons are digging up our bones.
You gotta come to Necron, Abe.
I guess it's kind of quite a disturbing scene to some degree, and just in general there's something unsettling about them. But they also have this kind of, not laid back, but I guess apathetic nature about them, in comparison to like how Big Face and the Almighty Raisin feel like they've got a mission and are trying to make Oddworld a better place and whatnot. Whereas the Three Weirdos are just like, we're dead, we were resting, now we're being disturbed, okay, you're the saviour of the Mudokons, can you just go and blow up the factory for us so we can get back to sleep? Oh, you need powers? Okay, here you go. Like, I don't know, they're just sort of a casualness to them, I guess. I don't know how to explain it, but they've just got a really interesting personality. Yeah, I think they're the mentor figures in Oddworld with the most personality, in my opinion. Even the fact that they're called the Three Weirdos, or those dudes now dead, shows like the irreverency going right back at them. Like even the other Mudokons, or at least Abe, is just like, I have no clue what you are, you're just weirdos.
Guys, weirdos, whatever you are.
I'd also say they match the tone of Abe's Exoddus very well. In that, you know, it's funny, everyone always talks about what game has the darkest ending, but thinking about it, I'd say Exoddus probably has the darkest opening to an Oddworld game. Just that dark shot of Necrom at night, and the bones, and even Abe's voice, I've always thought is in such a depressive tone.
This is Necrom. Long ago, the Mudokons brought their dead here.
Not to mention the subject matter, it really just sets up the darkest tone for the opening of an Oddworld game in my opinion. And I think the guide figure of this game being somewhat apathetic, creepy ghosts of deceased Mudokons missing body parts really fits perfectly with the whole dark setup of Abe's Exoddus. And that's why I bloody love the inclusion into the Oddworld franchise of the Three Weirdos.
Hello, follow me.